Did it hurt?
No,
Oh,
we're doing it.
okay. We're on?
We're on.
Okay. So now what?
So now what? Well, it's been so long
I
since
know.
I saw you.
Yes.
Welcome to our very first episode of the Strategic Shift.
Super excited.
Very excited. I am Priscilla Scott, one of your hosts, and this is the
Diane
lovely-
Desio. And I am definitely ready to, just make a difference, help people. So I'm so glad that we've linked up, and I just love your energy, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for us.
I know I admire, like, you do so many different things. So can you take us through like what is it that you do? How did you
Okay.
get here?
So right now I own a med spa in Las Vegas. And basically, when I first moved here, I actually got my real estate license. So you have a real estate license, I have a real estate license. But I realized it was probably one of the hardest jobs I've ever had because I didn't know anybody. You have to start with something. I wasn't happy being an agent. It's just a very, like, people don't know how hard it is to be a real estate agent. It is very hard. So I had my license as an esthetician, and I knew that I wanted to own a med spa one day. I didn't know how. I just knew I wanted one. So I rented a room. I bought a $1,500 machine. So it cost me about $2,000 to start my business. And I was in a room where no one knew I was there. I didn't know how I was going to get the clients. I just knew I had to work hard, and just put myself into it and just have faith, because I had a little girl. So I worked, you know, put my ads on Groupon. I was trying to get people that I knew to come in so I could get content. And next thing you know, the first month I actually got one client, and
Woo!
she was not happy. She wanted her money back. So it really questioned myself, like, am I doing the right thing? Like, but I had to keep going because I was already $2,000 in. And then the second month, I made enough to pay the bills. And so then the third month, I started to see a profit, and we got shut down by COVID.
Oh,
So yeah,
wow.
it was like, now what? So when we opened back up, I literally was, I didn't know what to do. So I met somebody that was into media production, and he was into sales. And I said, hey, I will give you a percentage if you help me, bring people in and close the deals. And so that's how I started. And we, eventually found a company that specialized in getting leads for med spas. And when I tell you I work 7 days a week, I literally work 7 days a week to build my clientele. And then I moved into this office, and then that was history. So that's kind of how I started.
What's your biggest lesson?
My biggest lesson is never depend on anybody, because people will change or something could happen, and then you're just kind of left hanging. Like, now what do I do? Because you have depended on this person to bring something to the company, and they're no longer there. So you have to make up for that.
Yeah.
So I think that's important, to just be able to do all the jobs just in case something happens. Yeah.
So I've learned that throughout the years too. So my background is like not at all like yours. I grew up as a Parks and Rec kid, hanging out in community centers. My background is in youth sports, facility management, traditional recreation. And then I switched into the technology sphere about 2 years ago.
Mhm.
But I went into real estate because back in 2010, when the economy here had crashed, the
I
city did
remember.
some massive layoffs, and I went to work for the police department, and then I
Mm.
went to work for a nonprofit, and I got laid off from those as well because the
Wow.
economy kept crashing. And so I was young and dumb. I got laid off like a month before I graduated college, and with my
Mm.
severance check, I thought I was like a multimillionaire. and which it wasn't even close. But I said, I don't want to work for anybody. Like, I don't want to get laid off ever again. So let me get my real estate license.
Mhm.
As the real estate market is crashing, yeah, I thought like, oh, let me get my real estate license. So I did. I got my real estate license, and shout out to my parents because I made no money for a year and a half.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And I had to borrow from the bank of mom and dad. And I was grateful that they were in a position to help because, and we'll go through this, but I don't come from, deep pockets. My
Right, right.
family immigrated here from the U.S., but at that point in time, they were in a position to help me. And when I did, after working for free for a year and a half,
Yeah.
finally make a sale, my entire commission went to my parents because I owed them so much money.
Yeah.
So I think I was broke and living off of my parents probably
Mm.
for like my first 2 years in real estate.
Yeah.
And it was at a time too when you would go and look at a house and there'd be like 40, 50 offers.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
So my first client, I showed probably like 80 houses
Oh,
to,
yeah.
and they bought with somebody else.
That's what I'm not
But
gonna
I was like, no, like we're gonna make this work.
I
We're
know
gonna
that
make this
feeling.
work. And then I was fortunate that when things did turn around, the city hired me back on, and
Yeah.
I was always involved in like our state association and our national, so I got to meet a lot of professionals throughout the country and stuff, and so that sustained me as I built my real estate business. But those first few years, and I was so young that I didn't realize what was happening across the country.
Mm.
And so I think that were that to happen now, I'd have a lot more fear.
Right, right, right.
Back then, I was just like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
Like, hey, mom, can I have another $500? Can I have this? Can I have that? And my parents at the time, they've always been super supportive, but
Right, right, right.
I was really in a good position because I didn't have a kid.
Oh, yeah.
You could
Yeah,
take
no.
different risks.
It's harder. It is very hard. Like, I'm not gonna man, I everybody I know that's in real estate, even right now, regardless of how high they are, it's stressful. It's a stressful job because it's always you're depending on people to get their paperwork together. And again, when you're depending on somebody, it's frustrating.
So it's actually funny how I learned about real estate. I have a really good friend, and we're the same age. We've been friends since sixth grade, and her grandfather had died, so she was buying her first house. Used his former business partner,
Okay.
and again, the economy it has is this is when like 07, 08, when we
Oh,
still
yeah,
saw some of
yeah.
the boom.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they were trying to just get into whatever. And she saw this house. It was beautiful. She fell in love with it. They wrote an offer. It gets accepted. Inspection report comes back, and there's like 200 items
Oh,
that need to be addressed. And she's like, well, this is weird. And so she shares it with her mom. Her mom's like, oh my gosh, there's something terribly wrong. Call up the realtor, say, hey, meet us there. Drive over to the house, and he sold them the wrong house. The
what?
house he wrote the offer on was a HUD home down the street on the same street. But when he did the paperwork, it was wrong. And he was like mortified. He offered to buy her paint so she could paint up the house, but it needed a whole
So
lot
she
more.
bought the wrong house.
She bought the wrong house.
That's the first I've ever heard of that.
So she is like, I'm getting my real estate license because I want to know how this happens.
Mm.
So, I get laid off, and her and I, with her realtor license, we used to preview homes.
Mm.
And I was like, I could do this. Like, I love looking at
Yeah, I
homes.
like
And
it.
so her and I would just find whatever house, go and look at it. We'd go into model homes. And so, like many, many moons later, she is in corporate project management,
Oh, wow.
and I still do real estate. So
Yeah.
we kind of swapped our lives a little bit.
So I bought a house here in 2013. It was kind of like after
Hmm.
the whole and the houses were so cheap. Oh my God. I was like, wow. And then as soon as I bought it, like when I was in the contract, they were going up steadily.
Hmm.
And like now it's crazy because houses have doubled in Vegas. I mean, Vegas is growing like outrageously. It's just but it's to the point where now like the interest rates and the how are you doing now in the housing market? Is it
So it's been pretty steady.
really?
Last year was a good year for me. This year, this time of the year, I generally don't see a lot of clients
Okay.
because they're coming out of being broke from Christmas
Mhm.
and gearing up for like the summer buying season. So it's been
Yeah.
steady. It has been slower than in previous years.
Yeah.
So I'm working with some mortgage partners to market myself and bring
Right.
in some additional business, which, talking about life transitions,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I didn't start out, I've always had a full-time job in addition to real estate.
Mm.
So I've always been kind of snooty about I only do referrals, mainly
Uh,
because I don't have the time.
yeah, it's a lot.
And then I have a transaction coordinating team that takes care of like all of my paperwork so that I
Okay.
am able to maintain a full-time job. But now that I'm focusing just on being a business owner, I am the receptionist, I
Yeah,
am the
exactly.
transaction
Yeah.
coordinator,
Right, right.
and the realtor all in one.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting, and I'm also running a new business, which is a consulting firm.
That's awesome.
So now, as I talk to you, though, like you're like, oh, I've done this and I've done that. So give
I
us a
have.
background.
Okay. So I got into the stock market at 20 because I was living in San Francisco and I was meeting a lot of people that were into stocks and I would
Okay.
just like pick their brain like how if I had this much money what stock could I put it on, and they would give me these stock tips and I would write them down and then I would go and do the research. And when I had a sum of money, I think it was like 50,000 that I had saved up, and I put it into Merrill Lynch and I started doing stocks. But then 9/11 happened. And when that happened, I think I lost like 90,000 that morning. Yes, I got crushed. And then so we kind of built, me and my father. I actually got my father into it because he likes numbers.
Mhm.
And so then we kind of built it up enough money to buy my first house when I was 20. It was actually for my father because he never owned a house. So we went to Marietta, Georgia, even though I was living in California, to find this home because, you just got more for your money. And then I started, that was the first house. And then, I was just steadily in the stock market. But then I also wanted to get into media production. At that time, I had some classes and I said, you know what? I'm going to go to Atlanta and get my bachelor's degree in media production. Got my bachelor's degree, and I went to go work for, I believe, Jermaine Dupri. I worked for him, Fat Cats. I was just looking for little jobs. And when I tell you that was even hard because, again, they want you to work full time for free. And, basically, they want you to go get their lunch and clean and do nothing of importance. Here I am, I paid all this money for a BA and they're treating me like I'm a maid. So then I'm like, this is not what I want to do. And I decided to go to school to be an esthetician because I went to a spa. I like the whole, of making people feel good. And so then I got into, I got my esthetician license. I started working. And then all of a sudden, here at this point, 2008, I had 5 homes in the Marietta, Georgia area. And I'm in the stock market very heavily, like to the point where, sometimes I didn't have to work because I was making a lot of money in the stock market, but I still like to be productive. And I all of a sudden what I had built up was crashing literally before
Mm.
my eyes. And my father was going into a depression because he's thinking, it's his fault. And I'm like, no, this is has to do with what's going on. I mean, when Washington Mutual was around, and
Mhm.
remember when Washington Mutual disappeared, I
Yep.
lost $50,000 on that deal that morning,
Wow.
like that. By 10 a.m., 50,000 was wiped out and I had to take it. You know what I mean? It was either like, oh, am I going to let this crush me, or am I going to like, I got to figure something out. I can't just let this, be it.
Mhm.
And so for the next 2 years, obviously I couldn't do the med spa because I had to save what I had built up. So I went with my ex-boyfriend. He wanted me to invest in a car dealership. And I believe I had 60,000 I gave him to invest in a car dealership. I know nothing about the car dealership. I just knew that I loved him and I wanted to try it. And a year later, I was completely broke and $250,000 in debt. I lost everything. I even pawned my jewelry. And then me and him broke up.
Oh gosh.
I was this close to going bankrupt. Like literally, it was just the lowest point in my life. Like here I went from having 5 houses in the stock market, living life, doing everything, to losing everything, pawning my jewelry, losing the homes, and getting robbed all within a year. So at that time, I literally had to. I mean, when I say I couldn't give up, I still, again, I couldn't give up, but I had to really lean on God because at that point
Mhm.
it was like that was all I had. So it was humbling. It definitely, it did. It got to the point where I had to move into some apartments, and my father had came and helped me out because I was doing, and he felt defeated. He was like, "We'll never live in a home again. This is it." And I didn't let that be it. I actually got a couple of jobs. I was working. I was able to save up some money to put down on my first house in Las Vegas. And so then, like I said, that house went up in value. I bought another house, and then I sold that house and started my medical spa business.
That's amazing. Like the amount of times that you've had to reinvent yourself.
I had to, yes. And I mean, some people they would give up, but like, no, there was no giving up, you know.
I think, like, as I'm listening to you, for me, the biggest takeaway is like just as a business owner, how many times you've had to put yourself out there and
Mhm.
then rebuild yourself, like not
Yeah.
giving up.
Well, I mean, everything is a gamble. If you don't try, then how are you going to fail? Like people are scared of failure, but failure is not a bad thing
Hmm.
because it does teach you, even if it's in a relationship or failing, you're going to learn something. You want
Hmm.
to. I mean, and I just use that as motivation, you know, to to be better because we're here for a limited time. So you got to just make the best out of it, and that's just what I did. So
Great.
it's definitely, you know, a story for sure. Like I can't believe I went through it. But again, like it made me appreciate because before when I had all this money, I'm like buying a car every year, buying jewelry, going shopping, buying, and it was like I couldn't, I was never
Mm.
happy. It was never like, oh wow, this I really did this. It was just like, what else can I do? But then when you lose everything and you're stripped down of everything, you really realize like, wow, that the stuff is nothing.
Hmm.
It's at this point, I just wanted to save my dad from being depressed and taking him out of that dark thing and saying, okay, it's money. We lost it. Okay, so now what? Let's move on. Like let's, got to make the best out of what we got.
I think depression, though, for like when you're losing everything around you,
Mhm.
depression is a really big topic. I remember when the housing market was booming, I was in like my teenage, early college years, and like to watch my parents. So my mom had my sister in high school, me shortly after in Costa Rica,
Mm,
really poor family,
that's hard.
um, from a very, very, like, low income house. Like, the house that I grew up in fits in this space,
Oh.
and there were a lot of us in there. And, which my family is really close, probably because we've always had that, like we've always physically been close.
Right,
Like,
that's
it was
awesome.
like our bathroom was like an airline bathroom, and the
Mm.
one sink was like the kitchen sink, the sink where we
Oh
washed
wow,
our
yeah.
clothes, the sink where we brushed our teeth. We never went without, but when we immigrated into the United States, my parents worked really, really hard
Mm,
to buy a house, buy cars, and move us kids. My mom eventually like petitioned. Our whole family lives here now,
that's awesome.
and it took a long time. So when the housing market was booming, they had multiple homes. They were
Oh, wow.
investing
Oh, nice.
here in
That's awesome.
Arizona. And to come from where we came from to
Mhm.
where they were at that point in time, I remember how hard it was when the economy was crashing
Mhm.
and just how defeated and devastated they were. And I think for anybody, regardless of if it's, like a national crisis or just personal life struggles, like losing everything,
Yeah, it's horrible.
it it does a lot to your mental state.
It does. There's a lot of suicides at that time. A lot of people went,
Mhm.
yeah, like it that was a very bad time. I mean, but like even now, like I said, with the whole presidency, the interest rates, my business feels everything. Because it is a luxury. We feel like if it's very, like for instance, last summer it was 120 degrees, one of the hottest summers. My business felt that. Nobody wanted to come out and get a facial or get a treatment. So it's you got to be creative. You can't just depend on one thing nowadays. It's unless it's something that is really booming. But even then, how long is it going to go for?
Yeah. So I'm excited though, because now with you and I partnering together, we're
Yeah.
going to try
A
a
couple
bunch
things,
of different
yes.
things.
I'm excited.
And our viewers can follow along as
Yes.
we hopefully succeed in all these new business endeavors that we have in the
Something has
works
to, yes.
and learn a little bit about us and with us. So,
Planting seeds. I mean, that's what you're gonna some are gonna grow and some aren't, but you gotta plant them. You have to, or you're just not gonna have nothing, you know? So I'm totally about planting seeds, helping people. I love the fact that you're, active in helping people because a lot of people they don't they're only thinking of themselves and surviving, but like literally it doesn't take a lot to help somebody, that is like the homelessness. You see people, it's getting more and more. Like
mhm,
from where I'm from, Bay Area is it looks like Dawn of the Dead, and even here.
yeah.
So
And I think like you, for me, because I've experienced, some hardships in my life, and the biggest thing was leaning on God.
mm,
And now at the point that I am in life, I always think of all the people that didn't have to help me but did,
mm,
and how overwhelming it was to take help when I felt I was so independent and had it all together. And so now I just, I pray that I can be somebody else's answered prayer,
right.
because I've gotten so much from so many other people.
And just being around that kind of energy, at this point in my life, I just want to be around people that are like yourself, that are just not about themselves, and but just wants to make a difference, and but also be a better person.
Mhm.
That's where I'm at right now. Like I don't want to be around anybody that's going to suck my energy or throw me off. So it's important that you know you are around the people that are going to bring you up, not bring you down,
Mhm.
because there is a lot of people that will bring you down, especially in Vegas.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, even like me searching out different ways of making money, like I've come across a lot of people that they just want to basically screw you over and for no reason,
Mhm.
just because. And by all means, you just want to be careful who you trust and who you do business with, because even with me, I've had a couple of people doing this business where they tried to ruin me for no reason, and it's crazy,
Mhm.
you know.
Well,
So
when you
I'm
take the
excited.
greatest risks,
Yeah.
there there is a reward at the end of the line.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
um, I appreciate you all joining us, and
Yes.
stay tuned because we're up to some really great things.
We are. We're ready.